Donald Trump affectionately refers to the Israeli Prime Minister as Bibi, a nickname that signals their close friendship and strong political union. But as tensions flare up in the Middle East, the alliance is being put to the test. Can it survive intact? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, President Donald Trump has long stood by Benjamin Netanyahu despite his expletive-ridden rant after Israel violated that ceasefire with Iran. The unprecedented intervention in Israel's war in Iran by the US showed the influence Bibi Netanyahu appears to have over the US president. But who holds the upper hand in this friendship, and can it stay strong?
No one was happier to see Donald Trump re-elected than Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. He was the first foreign leader to visit Trump in his second term.
I've said this before, I'll say it again. You are the greatest friend Israel has ever had in the White House.
Their strong bond was built during Trump's first term, when the US pulled out of the Iran nuclear deal, normalized agreements with the Arab states under the Abraham Accords, and moved the US embassy to Jerusalem. In term 2, the friendship looked set to continue and reached its peak. Trump ordered airstrikes on 3 of Iran's nuclear sites, joining Israel in what became a coordinated military escalation.
Our objective was the destruction of Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and a stop to the nuclear threat posed by the world's #1 state sponsor of terror. Tonight, I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success.
But then, Iran and Israel broke the ceasefire. Trump was furious and made it known in a public and filtered rant in which he swore on live TV.
You know what? We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
But one call from Trump when he was on board Air Force One and Israel's jets turned back from Iran. The US president has had less success in halting Israel's war on Gaza. He wants peace in the Middle East, but Netanyahu has other ideas. So, where does their alliance go from here?
Well, let's bring in our guests. Joining us from Washington, D.C., we have Frank Rose. Frank is president of Chevalier Strategic Advisors and former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State during the Obama administration. Here with me in the studio, we have Greg Swenson. He's chairman of the Republicans Overseas UK. And Yossi Mekelberg, he is Senior Consulting Fellow with the Middle East and North Africa Programme. That's at Chatham House in London. You're all very welcome to this roundtable. Yossi, to you first. Whether people like it or not, Benjamin Netanyahu has played President Trump like a fiddle, hasn't he?
Probably. The temptation for Trump was probably too big for him not to join the war. But it's interesting, because this is a president that came to power on the basis of making peace within 24 hours in Ukraine and Russia, and was very proud that during his first term, there were no wars, and definitely the United States not involved. But here was the opportunity when Israel basically cleared the skies in Iran, actually to, for the first time, use military force. On the other hand, within 48 hours, he could also impose ceasefire. So he gained from both. For the first time using military force, we still need to see how effective it was, but also stop it.
Greg, to you, there has never been a US president who has done Israel's bidding in this fashion. I mean, the Israelis must have been laughing last week getting Trump to do everything he did.
Well, I think it's a great relationship. The Israelis also did us, the Americans, a great service by clearing out the missile batteries, clearing out the anti-aircraft batteries. So it was basically clear skies. The Israelis basically had control of the skies over Iran. So it was much safer for those brave pilots flying 36 hours from Missouri to execute that strike. The other thing is, look, you have a great point, Enda. Look at the 40 years, the way the relationship has changed. When the Israelis struck the Iraqi nuclear facility in 1981, there was major pushback from the U.S. And I think not necessarily Reagan, but some of his people in the State Department were very upset, like Gene Kirkpatrick. Then you had 2007 when George W. Bush said, "Go ahead, we're not going to do it." But we don't, he kind of effectively acknowledged that it was okay for the Israelis to take out the Syrian one. And then, of course, we're here now where President Trump has taken decisive action.
And tell me, from an American standpoint, how important is this relationship between not just the two countries, but these two men seem particularly close?
No, it's obviously it's very healthy. There has been some ups and downs over the, like in Trump's first term, but compared to the Obama administration, and Frank can point to that, but I think it was quite different from the Obama years, and even different from the Biden years, where President Biden was very critical of Netanyahu, very critical of the Saudis. He kind of went out of the gates with being critical of our allies, including the UK, whereas President Trump has been very consistent with the Israelis, with the UK, with our allies.
Thanks, Greg. Frank, to you worked for years with President Obama. He would never have signed off on everything Trump has done for Israel and Netanyahu, would he?
Well, I think it really depends on the situation, to be honest with you. It really situational. But let me go to a couple of the points that were raised before, whether Trump has been played by Netanyahu. I think people underestimate Trump at their own peril. Trump is a very wily politician, and he knows people. I mean, he has beat the Democrats twice, and they thought he was very easy. So I would be very, very weary about saying that he has been played by Netanyahu, number one. Number two, I do think to a certain extent, Trump gets a lot of credit for his relationship with Israel. I wouldn't necessarily say he is the most pro-Israel president we've ever had, but he has made some significant achievements, such as the Abraham Accords in the first Trump administration, and working with Israel to take out the Iranian nuclear program this time.
Yossi, to you, President Trump is now calling for corruption trials involving Netanyahu and Israel to be cancelled. How significant is that? I mean, will anyone in Israel in the judiciary listen to this?
I think it's preposterous, to be honest. It's not for a foreign leader to intervene in a trial, in a corruption trial, in the legal affairs of another country. I don't think anyone would like to see it happening in the United States, that the foreign leader said whether a court case should stop or not. There is a court case that goes for a long time, and the reason that it goes for a long time because it's Netanyahu himself that delays it time and again and asks for more delays and more delays. Only today his lawyer asked for another 2 weeks of delay. It could have been done, finished for probably 2-3 years ago and not been the delay. The legal system in Israel and justice should be heard, seen, and done in Israeli courts without intervention of the American president. He's not in control of the world. He can't tell any other legal system whether a court case should continue or not. The fact that Israeli minister leapt into this and said, yes, you see, even American president, to be honest, who cares? I think Trump better look into his legal affairs that are very precarious, and only being elected again president probably saved him from a prison term.
And Yossi, just tell me, how do comments like that be received by the Israeli public?
Depends who you ask. Probably Netanyahu's supporter will rejoice, but I think for most Israeli, the intervention in legal proceedings in Israel, but on the other hand, Netanyahu is not that popular in Israel right now. And by the way, I don't buy the close relationship between Trump and Netanyahu. Trump is so transactional. It can change every second. As long as he said what Trump wants to hear and it appeals to his vanity and ego, they will have great relations, and Netanyahu does it every single sentence. The minute that he will stray a little bit from that, I think the story is going to be very different.
Greg, we did see some friction last week. We even heard President Trump using language that we would not be able to broadcast on Roundtable. So it can be a strained relationship at times.
Absolutely. Yossi's right. President Trump is transactional, that's for sure. And in this case, the transaction has gone rather well for both sides, and that's great. But he was frustrated the other day. I've argued that, we'd rather have F-bombs than real bombs. And I think the president would agree with that. The president is an anti-war president. He'll use military power specifically and tactically. He did it in his first term in Syria with 300 Russian mercenaries being killed. He did it with executing General Soleimani. He's not afraid to use military strength. And he did it again and demonstrated that, the Americans are, we are powerful and will use our power wisely.
Greg, President Trump. What does he see in Netanyahu that he likes as a leader? Is it the strong man, the military, the rhetoric? What is it about Benjamin Netanyahu?
It's probably all of the above. I mean, he does really appreciate people with military background. He appreciates the fact that he is bold, he is strong. Like him or not, he is a very powerful leader in Israel, and not afraid to fight back, not afraid to punch back. And with the court trials, I think, remember, President Trump is coming off 4 years of the weaponized justice system, really political cases that never would have been brought on anybody else if he wasn't Donald Trump. So, he's got a little scar tissue there, and I can understand why he's put his, he's raised his hand on this issue. I'm not suggesting that those cases aren't valid, because I haven't followed it specifically. But I do think that the president is very wary, very concerned when politicians are challenged like he was in the last, not even 4 years, but the last 2 years.
Thanks, Greg. Frank, same question to you. What do you think Trump sees in Netanyahu that he really likes?
Yeah, I think he sees a leader who is prepared to take quick and decisive action, number one. Number two, I think, as Greg noted, I think there's a little sympathy, because I think, President Trump believes that he was prosecuted by the justice system in the United States, and he believes to a certain extent that the same thing may be happening to Netanyahu.
And tell me, Frank, is this a relationship do you think will endure for the next 4 years of Trump? Is there anything that you can see kind of derailing it?
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a bromance. I think it's very transactional. A couple of weeks before the strikes on Iran, there was some real friction between Netanyahu and Trump over negotiating a nuclear deal, as well as the humanitarian situation in Gaza. So I think it will continue to be very, very transactional. Overall, I agree with Greg. I think it's a solid relationship, but it has had its ups and downs over the years.
Well, just on the issue of Gaza, I mean, do you think there's anything Netanyahu can do in Gaza that will result in Trump telling him to stop? Because nobody has told him to stop yet.
Well, we will have to see. We have an unfolding humanitarian disaster in Gaza. At the same time, Netanyahu has been very clear his number one objective is the total dismantlement of Hamas. So I think from my perspective, and I'd be interested in Greg's view, is that the president would like to see an end of the war in Gaza, the return of the remaining hostages, and then a peace put in place to rebuild Gaza.
Let's bring in Yossi. Just on the Gaza issue, Yossi, President Trump could stop this in a heartbeat, couldn't he? if he told Netanyahu enough?
He did it in January, so he probably can do it now. And again, because of the relations with anyone, you ask about enduring relationship with Trump. He doesn't have enduring relation with anyone. Elon Musk, and at least in the first term, so many people, it was a revolving door in the White House and anywhere close to him. So there are no enduring relationship. But at the same time, if you want to bring a stop to the war in Gaza, he could do because he did it earlier and he can do it now. And not only this, it's what Israelis want. In big percentage, most Israelis want to see the end of the war in Gaza. Their top priority is actually to see the hostages returning. And see, only 2 days ago, 7 Israeli soldiers were killed. It's entering Hamas for a while, until October 7, acted as a sort of a military. Now they moved into becoming a guerrilla force. No one wants to entrench into a place like Gaza and fight a guerrilla, because we know you can't win it.
Greg, to you, what message does the relationship between Trump and Netanyahu send to other leaders in the region?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think what it says is that we will work with Israel. And Israel has become, it's not, people complain that we support Israel, and yet Israel supports us by having major influence in the Middle East. It's the only democracy in the region. They are our military allies, and it's very useful. And as I said, the fact that they cleared out Iranian airspace was very useful to us. And so I think that relationship will continue. I think the message is we will work together, so be careful. And I think that, and going back to, as Frank mentioned, the Abraham Accords, President Trump's all about peace. He's an anti-war president. Peace through strength, but peace through business. And that worked with the Abraham Accords. And I think you'll see another 5 or 7 countries coming into the Abraham Accords in the relatively near term.
What, because they're scared?
No, that's because they realize that doing business is better than doing war.
Frank, just look into your crystal ball for me, please. Who's next in the region? Who do they see as a threat? I mean, they believe Iran has been taken care of now, perhaps?
Well, I think the big strategic concern has been Iran. I don't particularly think the Israelis are concerned about the Gulf states or the other states in the region. I think the focus has and remains Iran. And I want to say the Iranian regime is still there, and we're going to have to continue to manage it. As I mentioned earlier, we believe that damage has been done to their nuclear sites, but there's a chance that we may have to go back there again. So, number one, I think the biggest threat is and remains Iran. I do not believe that the Israelis view the Gulf states as a threat to their security. Quite to the contrary, I believe they view the Gulf states as strategic partners.
Thanks, Frank. Yossi, that's a great point, isn't it? The Iranian problem has not been dealt with.
No, but it can be resolved only militarily. This would be a big mistake to think that Israel can resolve everything militarily. It overstretched, whether it's Lebanon, it's Gaza, it's the West Bank, Iran, Syria, everywhere. The only modus operandi under Netanyahu is the use of force. And not translating military successes, and no doubt whether the Hezbollah and what happened with Iran, those are all military successes. But how it's translated into any policy that ensures long-term Israel's security. And Greg, I agree with you. The friendship between the United States and Israel is paramount. But at the same time, we're talking about shared democratic values. Netanyahu doesn't share these democratic values anymore. Because only next week, if you see the series of legislation, bills that are actually tabled in the Knesset, are going to degrade Israel democracy. So while it succeeds militarily, the democracy is struggling on its last feet. At the end of the day, at the heart of this conflict, it's not Iran and not Syria and not Lebanon, it's the Palestinian issue. The ability to end the war in Gaza, stop this humanitarian disaster there, bring the hostages back, and, to be very boring, go back to two-state solution and ensuring Palestinians enjoy the same rights that Israelis.
Greg, what do you say to that point Yossi made, that America is backing a man who doesn't believe in democracy and is degrading Israeli democracy?
Well, I disagree. And I think if you look back at the controversy during the Biden years when he wanted to make changes to the Supreme Court, and everybody was shocked about that, and Biden made some very critical, got involved in other countries' management, and I thought that was a little much. But also we found out that the Supreme Court was not perfectly managed. So look, I think there's.
In what sense?
Yeah, well, I can't recall. It was 5 years ago, but I think that the fact that it was particularly political, lifetime positions, which we have in the United States as well, but I do think there were some flaws with it, and if that and of course Netanyahu backed away with all the protests that were going on. President Trump wants to get back to doing business. He's done it very well with the Gulf states. Both the Israeli military and the Gulf state militaries work through the U.S. Central Command. So they're already cooperating militarily. Now they're cooperating economically for the last 5 years since the Abraham Accords. If he doesn't get reelected, which doesn't look like he would right now, that's fine. I think everybody will be happy with what he's done so far, especially during these conflicts.
Yossi, just come back in there.
Israel under Netanyahu, especially in the last 3 years, is most unpopular ever. If you look beyond the United States, and even in the United States, there were demonstrations, again, not that I agree with everything that's been said in this protest, but if you look, it almost became a pariah state for the first time indicted in the ICJ, the ICC, Netanyahu, and we might agree with the ICJ, we might agree with the ICC, but the fact that Netanyahu got Israel to this point, that in some cases it's treated as a pariah state, this is on his watch, and we can't ignore it.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing when there's countries that want to destroy Israel, and then he has to be defensive, and then all of a sudden he's a pariah state. I don't think he's made Israel a pariah state. I think Israel's considered a pariah state, especially by the left around the world, because they're defending themselves. And so I think there's a point where President Trump often doesn't care if people are angry with him, and that he does the right thing, and in spite of the fact that people are hanging him in effigy.
What he thinks is the right thing,
But
Greg.
you see, it's not only the left. It's here David Lammy, supporter of Israel, and Starmer, and Macron, and Carney in Canada. They are coming now with this kind of statements of it's not against Israel. It's about the policies of Netanyahu and his government that are the most extreme, allowing settler terrorism. That's the question, not that whether what Hamas did was despicable and no one supported, God forbid, but at the same time, going and killing 55,000 Palestinians in Gaza, deprived them starvation of population. This is something very different.
He's lost Israel a lot of friends. We can agree on that. Frank, final point to you. President Trump falls in with a lot of people, and he famously, ultimately falls out with the same people. How long do you give this friendship?
We will have to see, fundamentally, it will continue to be a transactional relationship with Netanyahu, like it has been with just about every other world leader. That said, I think that the key issues that are coming up in the relationship that will create friction are two. One, ending the war in Gaza, and secondly, whether to pursue regime change in Iran. Netanyahu has made it very clear that's his long-term objective, where Trump has been very, very cautious, though he teased at it the other day about regime change in Iran. So we will see. It is always an interesting ride when you're with Donald Trump.
That's for sure. What a way to end the show. Frank, thank you so much for your insight. Yossi and Greg as well. Superb. Thank you so much. Remember, you can see more discussion and debate on our YouTube channel. Search for Roundtable, TRT World. But for now, from me, Enda Brady, and all the team here, goodbye, and thank you for watching.